Here are the solutions to last lesson's puzzles. So the first one is write as small as you can. The smaller you make your characters, the more quickly you're going to be able to write them. So it's a bad habit to start writing things large, and if you make them as small as you can, that's great. You've been instructed to use 6 dot per linear inch dot paper at the beginning of this lesson, or at the beginning of this series of lessons. You may want to reduce that. Certainly think very carefully before you expand the size of those letters, because the smaller, tighter writing is going to be beneficial for you. Okay, the second hint. Don't write quickly, write well. Don't try for speed initially. Just write things as good as you can, and you're going to be correcting things. We've given you the technique of circling when you go back to read it, circling it with a red pen, thinking about how you can do it better. As you continually implement those improvements, that's going to pick up your speed over time. So think about the improvement and thinking about doing things well, and speed will come. Third hint, when you hear a new word, trace it. You can do this with your finger in the air, or you can do it in your mind, but get in the habit of trying to figure out how you're going to write these words in Gregg, and those images will get burned into your mind. And the last one, practice solutions to little problems. Again, you need to be reading everything you write. Practice reading is just as important as writing. And when you see something that could be done better, put a circle around it, research it, think about how you're going to do it better next time, put it on your practice list to practice it. And that's going to help with your improvement and help you get better and better as you continue your journey with the Gregg shorthand. We are ready to look at the 5th and final lesson in the Gregg course. So what I'm going to do is go over this page by page with you. I'm not going to be writing out a lot of these examples. Dr. Gregg has already done that for us, but I'm going to be giving you a lot of hints as to how to continue your development with Gregg shorthand in the future. So on page 21, we see a list of abbreviated words. We've already looked at some abbreviated words, and here you have a list with some additional ones. Some of these may be slightly different than abbreviations I gave you, in which case you can take a look at it. Again, this is the 1888 version. I am also going to give you some other abbreviated words you can use. So certainly add Dr. Gregg's words to your list here. I would suggest maybe word and work that you don't add those, because we have better ways of doing those, which you'll see. But most of the others I think should be good. I do want to also draw your attention to the brief forms that were used in the Gregg Notehand course that I talked about earlier. Now, I looked at this course, and they used just a small number of brief forms, but I went ahead and wrote them out for my own practice. So I'm going to let you take a look at those. We'll capture that on video here, and you may see some useful forms in there. Again, these are the ones that the authors of the Gregg Notehand course thought were valuable for note-taking students. And so I think we can jump on board with their effort and consider these as possible abbreviations that you may want to study. Again, you don't need to use any abbreviation that you don't feel is worth your time. So as you're taking notes, you're doing a little bit of useful work every day, find the things that are actually appearing in your notes, and those are the most important ones for you to learn how to abbreviate. Now, I've got one other resource here that, and this is a very important one for abbreviations, and this is the Gregg Shorthand Dictionary. And there are actually many of these shorthand dictionaries. I am going to recommend that you use the anniversary edition. This is the one that came out around 1930. Let's see, here we go, copyright 1901, copyright 1930. Yeah, that's the most recent copyright on it. And this is actually revised from some of the earlier editions. But what this will do is give you a consistent set of abbreviations. So as you go through some of the other reference materials I'll give you, you're going to find that you have consistency. And this isn't something you want to pick up and study. It's a reference material. So for instance, if you have to write the word donation time after time after time, and you want to know a good abbreviation without thinking it through yourself, you can come in here, look it up, and use that, and you can save yourself a little bit of time. So again, use this as a dictionary. It's not something to try to memorize. If you were going to be a stenographer or a court reporter, you might want to memorize it, but that's not what you're doing. Okay, well, I'm going to go through this in order. We're going to come back and talk a little more about abbreviations when Dr. Gregg gets to it, but we'll go on to page 22 for now. So this is about phrasing. I talked to you a little bit about phrasing when I put the words to do together in a to-do list. Anytime you have a couple of small words, you can cram them together, and then you save a little time in the pen lift. It also actually makes them a little bit easier to recognize. If you put a couple small words together, they're easier to recognize than the two small words individually. So Dr. Gregg has given you a few hints here. Let's see, yeah, he's given us another page of little abbreviations, and some of these now are getting to be quite long, where he's putting 4 or 5 words together. Think very carefully before you study some of those. Ones that you think you'll use a lot, you can certainly put on your word list to practice, but I wouldn't, for instance, if you don't say and which may not be a whole lot, I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to study that. Okay, I want to draw your attention to another reference book now for phrasing. And this is the Gregg Shorthand Phrase Book. I'm going to put PDF copies of both the Anniversary Dictionary and the Anniversary edition of the Phrase Book in with the resources for this course. So at least you can have PDF versions. If you can find a paper-bound version, that's great. Again, these were published around the 1930s, but they were very high-quality paper and binding, so these books have stood the test of time very well. And there were a lot of people interested in stenography at that time, so they're not too hard to pick up in the secondhand market. But again, we'll have a PDF available, and you can just get hints of things that might phrase well together and how to stick them together in a phrase. Myself, I find the dictionary to be the more valuable of the references. For phrasing, just the idea that you take small words, if you've got a couple small words, and put them together is generally enough to go on. But this can be a useful reference also. So let's turn on to see what Dr. Gregg has to tell us on page 24. And here he's giving us some general rules for abbreviation. And these are basically the things that were used to develop that Gregg Shorthand Dictionary that we're going to be using for a reference. But you can do it yourself if you want to, by following some of these simple rules, like dropping the terminations. Basically, he's trying to figure out a recognizable shape for any word. And once he's got enough so that he's sure he can recognize the word, he doesn't write the rest. Then an example he uses here is for diplomacy. He might write only DIPLOM, and that might be enough to cue him on what the word is, given the context. So you can use this as you think about abbreviations for yourself. Again, I would encourage your use of the Anniversary Dictionary, because decades and decades of thought by many, many people went into coming up with that set of abbreviations. So it can save you a little bit of work. Okay, he talks a bit about punctuation. We did that earlier in the course because we were jumping right into using materials. And then he's got some reading and writing exercises. You have been reading and writing, and hopefully will be continued reading and writing as you write your lists, your to-do lists, your grocery lists, your notes. Hopefully you're getting into actually writing yourself notes now. You were copying news articles. So all of those things are basically reading and writing exercises. You can do these. They're kind of fun if you want, and they show examples of Dr. Gregg's handwriting in the shorthand. So they're fun, but you really have more relevant reading and writing exercises right in front of you with your daily work. Just remember, anytime you write it down, make sure to read it. Oops, and let's capture this page. We'll capture all these pages. Okay, and capture page 27 here. Capture page 28. And that's the last of Dr. Gregg's template. I just have a couple more sentences. Here is a book. If you want additional text to study, I suggest the Gregg Shorthand Anniversary Edition. Again, this was printed in around 1930, and it's available in the secondhand market. I will include a PDF with the references, and it's consistent with the dictionary and the phrase book that will also be in the references. So good luck with your Gregg Shorthand.